The Walking Dead.
To end.
Now, I know AMC isn't going to listen to me, but I think it's pretty much time for this show to start wrapping itself up. And by the way, full-on spoilers for Walking Dead in this video. It's become pretty apparent since about the 4th season that they don't really have a plan for where they want the story to go, and they really don't want it to ever end. And not having a plan isn't inherently bad, but not having any sort of conclusion in mind has made the show's storytelling suffer. Just take a quick look at AMC's other big breakout show from the last couple years, Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad was a very tightly written 5 seasons with at least a solid foundation of where they wanted Walt's arc to end. As a result, and admittedly a bunch of other things too, Breaking Bad is just a far superior series. After about 8 seasons of The Walking Dead, a repeating pattern of story beats has started to appear. And here it is. Rick's group wanders around, surviving against zombies for a while, with some inter-group conflict sometimes. Group finds a new home, and starts to build it up as their home. Rick will eventually step away or be removed from his position of power for a while. Eventually, he'll be reinstated as the leader, usually after some form of crisis. Things start to look up for a bit, and then their home will be destroyed. Rinse and repeat. If you're doubting what I'm saying, here's a list of all the locations they have called home since the beginning of the series and that have eventually been destroyed. CDC building, Herschel's farm, the prison, Terminus, kind of, and then finally Alexandria. Now, the writers have a chance to do something really awesome at this point in the show and lead towards a satisfying ending in the coming season, which I'll detail in a minute. But they probably won't. They'll probably just keep to their pattern that they've established over the last several years. Now, besides this pattern starting to get boring, the other main problem the show is having is the characters themselves and their arcs. For your story to be effective, your characters need to serve a very specific purpose in the narrative and usually be dynamic or changing in some way. Now, not every character needs to be dynamic all the time, but it generally helps keep them interesting if they are, especially in a longer form series like The Walking Dead. And the first character problem is that there are just way too many of them on the show for me or any audience member to care about. Whenever someone who isn't a primary part of Rick's group dies, I feel nothing because I don't really know who they are. Last season, everyone kept moaning about how some of Negan's guys killed some Alexandrian lady, but I don't know who she was, so I felt no attachment to this, and it started to get annoying when the characters kept complaining about it. Most of the characters on this show serve no purpose other than to be cannon fodder for zombies or enemies. Now, onto the primary characters. See, Rick has gone through the same arc of transitioning between the effective leader or the full-on crazy person at least 3 times in the show. Depending on what the writers want from him at the time, they'll just pull him in the other direction from where he is. Daryl, aside from kind of being a dick, a warmonger, and a huge idiot this season, has been completely stagnant since Merle died in Season 3. He spent something like 5 episodes last season just sitting on his motorcycle, driving around, leading a herd of zombies, doing nothing for his character. And this is a huge bummer because he used to be super interesting, and watching him grow from kind of a racist asshole into a loyal and valuable member of the group was one of the best parts of the early seasons. And then you look at Carol, and I'm not even sure where Carol is at mentally at this point. She was having a really interesting and dark arc a couple seasons ago, where she went from the battered housewife to this sort of grizzled badass who would just kill people. But now I'm not even sure what she's doing. Like, what's her mental state? The point I'm trying to drive home here is that the characters have outlived their arcs. At this point, they either need to be killed off or the show starring them needs to come to a close because there's just nowhere for them to go. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the showrunners have an opportunity to do something really cool and have a satisfying conclusion. And I'm actually going to lay out how I think they could do this and solve the problems with the show. And yes, it involves the show ending after one more, probably shorter season. See, up until this point, the show has been a series of escalations in scale, with a big lull somewhere in the middle where Rick and co were just kind of wandering around. The first episode of the show was a man alone in this new ruined world, and then the rest of the season was that same guy with his family and small group. Season 2 grew to where it was one group meeting another group and then working through the conflicts they had with each other. Then you go to Season 3, and it became society versus society, with the conflict against the governor and Woodbury. And then, now, with the introduction of Alexandria, the Hilltop, the Kingdom, and the Saviors, it became It's the largest scale they've ever had. It's an entire new world with the potential of eventually reconstructing a real society. And then they had the war with Negan, and now that's concluded. Side note, Rick and co. probably should have struggled more throughout the war. There was only one scene where it seemed like they lost anything. They really should have been through the ringer in this war and eventually come out on the other side, but whatever. It's time to start building a satisfying conclusion. They reached their absolute low with the deaths of Abraham and Glenn and subsequent subjugation under Negan, and have now clawed themselves out of that situation and emerged victorious. Just by examining story structure, we all know what part is supposed to come next. It's the resolution. What I would do for the rest of the show is have some arguments and debates about Rick's decision to not kill Negan. You see, Maggie, Daryl, and friends have been following Rick's lead for years, and they wouldn't realistically start a violent conflict with him, so it should be verbal and philosophical. And that should be the primary character struggle for the final season. The main plot should be about them building up their towns, trade works, and new laws to start building a new society. Maybe just make it 8 to 10 episodes, because it wouldn't be very action-packed. But the war with Negan was the climax of this story, in my version, at least. Explain what the hell's going on with that helicopter thing, too, because that is kind of intriguing. And then maybe you have an epilogue where an adult Judith is putting down flowers on a grave that's revealed to be Rick's 30 years later or something after the main events of the season. And then the camera pans out and you reveal the full-on network of towns and societies that they've all built together. The characters have earned a happy ending, honestly, but I'm kind of getting burnt out on this show. And I thought the last season was pretty solid overall, but I just don't see much point in coming back to the show because I don't feel like it's going anywhere. And it really bums me out because this show used to be one of my favorites, and I do still care about the characters, and I think all the actors do fantastic work with what they're given. The writing just doesn't grip me anymore. And I think adding a conclusion like that in really would bring me back in emotionally. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys still enjoy watching The Walking Dead? Do you agree with me that you think it should end too? Do you like what I came up with as an ending? Whatever you think, let me know below. And until next week, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.